Hello and welcome to another We Are Developers Live. This is the last live show from Corfu, where I still am at a resort because my partner wanted to go to the beach, and I thought I can work from wherever because working for We Are Developers allows you to do that. Let's just listen to all your other companies. We can do that too. It's going to be fun. How are you doing, Dan?
Yeah, I'm very well. I'm in a less exotic location. I'm, as always, in the UK. But yeah, on that note, after seeing you going traveling, I've got an article coming out. I've asked a few people kind of for their perspectives. Where is that? That looked like a very grand library.
It is.
Kind of.
It's basically it's a resort here that's basically called the George Bay Resort. It's supposed to be very British, but there's only German people here. But yeah, this is one of those libraries with like a big jigsaw puzzle that nobody finishes and like lots of books that people left behind. So it's an interesting collection of like random things. And it's also amazing how many people take huge books with them on vacation and then leave them here because Euro Wings or something doesn't allow you to bring them back.
Could
And there's
be.
books in like 5 languages. It's really, really cool.
Wow. Well, I'd love to say I could read those, but I won't be able to. Typical Brit. But yes, we might be getting an extra little guest then appearing on the live show if anyone decides to just walk into the library, I suppose.
We had it yesterday. The really weird thing yesterday was that there were 3 people in here. 2 of them were also working remotely. They're freelancers, and of course they were from Berlin as well. And I'm like, this is bizarre. And
Yeah.
and one of them is like, I saw you on stage at that conference. And you're like, oh God, no. Like, but the
Very cool.
cool thing about being ginger is that you're in a sunny spot and people come up to you and like, oh, did you just arrive? And you're like, no, that's my tan for the week. There's nothing else coming here. So this is basically it. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I can't say I'm not much better, to be fair. I am that stereotype. I try not to be, but within about 2 days, I'm bright red. And I suppose at least I don't have like Union Jack swimming shorts. That would be like, that and some socks and sandals. I sort of try not to look like the Brit on holiday, but can't help it. I just go red.
well, I mean, you still got the bulldog tattoo and the 100% British beef one, right?
Yeah, definitely. That's right up my street. But it's okay because we've got strength in numbers because we're joined by somebody else today. I'll let you introduce them. But yeah, another fellow Brit.
Yeah, we have Graham the Deaf here.
Hey everyone. Oh, you can't even
Yes,
see
that
me.
is.
Hey everyone.
There we are.
Cool. Well, we had you before live at the Congress at the Day Zero events, and we just realized that we hadn't quite promoted the video yet, and it was kind of off the cuff as well. Like I think we're more prepared today to have some things. And so, introduce yourself again. Like, what do you do?
Yeah, hey everyone. So yeah, my name's Graham. I work for a company called SFG20. We do how to maintain buildings properly so people don't get injured is the easiest way I can describe it. And we build all the software behind that lets companies like build out how they're going to maintain things and schedules and stuff. My role's head of accessibility. So obviously I do all of the fun stuff. And then I also do a lot with W3C, currently writing WCAG 3 at the moment. So that's quite interesting, especially as we've just been trying to work on triggering content. And it's amazing how difficult that can be to actually come up with a solution for it, because it's like the trigger warning can't be triggering. So how do you allow people to do that? So we've been having a lot of fun trying to come up with new and innovative ways to do that. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah, and I mean, that's basically counteracting all the cool like scrolly telling things and like animation bits and like that we're very proud of that we can do these things. Yeah, it's there's a post also in the newsletter this Friday about like 5 things you can do for neurodivergent people to actually make the whole interface calmer. And there's so many simple things that you can do. Just like don't just put everything in there, which is ironic seeing your background because you work for a highlighter factory, it seems.
The whole reason for this is that people can edit my face with weird things behind me, like dinosaurs and stuff. So there you go. Have fun, everyone.
Fair enough. Yeah, it's an interesting world, the accessibility thing. I mean, I always collect. I'm a big fan of it. I mean, I've been a participant consultant for quite a while as well. Next week, we're thinking about next the week after that, we have another person coming and talk about accessibility. And I find it like it's important to keep the topic up because people forget so fast about it again. Like we always try to, what do I do to be legally compliant? And then that's that. And yeah, it's tricky that every time something fancy comes out, people will actually forget all about like thinking about the people who are not as you are. or they basically have a different way of accessing things. I think Apple was to blame a lot of times. I remember when we had like a cover flow, and everybody's like, "Oh, every interface should look like this," and you're like, "No, that makes no sense whatsoever." Because okay, and now we got liquid glass, which is like just forget about contrast, background, and foreground, right?
Well, there was the grey on grey moment, which was brilliant. That's where Apple really started with the screw you if you've got a disability moments. But you know, they do that and then they fix the thing, and then everyone thinks they're amazing. So maybe that's the trick. Maybe we should build inaccessible sites on purpose, fix them, and then everyone goes, "Oh, how amazing are you for fixing the things that you broke in the first place?" That could be the tactic.
Well, it's a bit like when I went on Reddit. I never asked for advice. I just posted something generally wrong and then let people fix it for me. That was a much faster way to get feedback. So
Yeah, answering your own question with a wrong answer is the best way to get the right answer. Yeah.
I think your like personal SEO is pretty good because the Graham the Dev, you're known everywhere, but like your real name doesn't show up anywhere. Is there a reason because is it embarrassing? Is it Farage or something, or is it like?
I'm just very conscious of putting too much of my personal life into the world. I share what I want to share, sort of thing. And also, I managed to get swizzled a long time ago where my identity was stolen. So now I'm very, very conscious of it. I say my identity was stolen. Someone managed to find out my credit card details and put a load of charges on it. So it wasn't serious, but it was enough for me to go, well, what's with the last name? So my last name is the Dev. As far as most people are concerned, and there's only a chosen few who know my real last name, which is great until it comes to LinkedIn, because I'm Graham R on there, and I can never connect with anyone on LinkedIn because they can never find me.
Well, I mean, stealing credit card details is quite problematic because it all multiplies. Like once you have one identity bit of somebody, then actually you can get to the next step as well. I mean, that's why people, privacy and security people, are now all up in arms about Sora too. About like if you can actually generate a video from somebody from a few seconds of video that you found somewhere else, it's so easy to pretend to say horrible things as CEO for a company, which would basically be a PR disaster. Also, I mean, calling your grandmother and pretending to be somebody else, like, oh, I'm my nephew's in prison and he needs money to get out. That's an old trick, but now with Sora 2 and other video generators, it's going to be very easy to actually pretend that you're somebody else, and that's a dangerous thing.
It's really funny you say that, because I actually set up a code word with all of my close family, so that if I ever phoned and had a problem, I would say the word, because my mum also managed to fall victim to a very, very clever banking call. And at that point, I realized just how good the scammers have got now. So, yeah, we have a word that we use. And if I'm like, I need money, what's the word? And if I don't get the word, I won't get the money. So I can't remember what it is right now, which is great. So if I ever do need money, I'm screwed.
Is it show me the money? Like
pineapple. No.
No, I mean it has a certain veneer to it, Graham the Dev. It sounds like a magician's name or something. I mean, we always have the problem with Dan, that we call him Dan or Daniel, but not Danny, because Danny Cranny sounds like something out of Bob the Builder.
yeah, I was thinking that, like when you said, Graham, you don't use your surname, I'm thinking like mine's right there, and look at it, it's bad enough, you know what I mean? So but I understand where you're coming from, but I suppose the flip side is that, like, when you got my surname, there's really no, I think there's one other one. You go on Facebook and there's somebody else with this surname, but it's pretty rare. So I'd imagine, I don't know if that's good or bad for me having my identity stolen. I don't know, but
yeah, it's trickier. Yeah, and Graham the Dev, as I said, it's like a magician name. It gives you a certain cool veneer.
It's great until I want to change careers, isn't it? And then at that point, I'm in trouble. You know, I should have just put Graham something random, because now it's like, well, if I want to go off and be a plumber, Graham the plumber's not going to work now, is it?
Well, I mean, if you want to build hearing aids, that would be one way of doing it. Now that's just because most Germans can't pronounce a V in English, and now our V sounds like an F. So whenever I talk about developer relations and with a super German accent, people are like, what you deaf? Like what are you talking about? Or deaf even? Like, because German can't pronounce TH as well. So that's the other confusion, the moment that you have in there.
Say that again, sorry, I didn't quite catch you.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
the level of humour we're going for, people.
I was last holiday. I was in Spain and I saw a magician there, and he was amazing. He went on stage and went like, "Uno, dos," and then there was like a flash and some fog, and then he was gone without a trace.
That took me a second. I was so slow there.
Okay, let's look at some topics. How about that? Like that we can chat about. Cool. Okay, current affairs. We have a few things here, and one of the interesting bit is that somebody claims that the era of AI slop cleanup has begun, so that there's much more. I know there's a lot of people on LinkedIn that say like they're like vibe code cleanup people. But do you think it really is already there that you can sell yourself as somebody, we're going to fix the thing that your AI has broken?
I mean, you can sell yourself as that thing, but most of the people I see who are saying that they are the vibe code fixers tend to look like vibe coders themselves in the way that they present everything. So it's a bit of a funny one, but I certainly think there is a market for it, to be honest. I do think there is. I think there's a lot of companies that will make the mistake of following the hype, get someone to vibe code a thing, find huge security holes or missing bits of logic or things breaking, and they'll need someone who understands fundamentals to go in and fix those things, because I don't think you can vibe code your way out of certain things.
It's going to be interesting if there's I mean, we had this with accessibility for years and years as well. I mean, people do horrible things, and then you're the one who's supposed to fix it, and it's a very unthankful job because so many things have gone wrong already that should not have gone wrong, that need extra work now to replace. And I think with AI, with just vibe coded code, it's never meant to actually be looked at by people. So the idea is that it's throwaway code that you actually vibe it again afterwards. So it's like people trying to turn that into a full product, and maybe they haven't understood the concept of vibe coding.
Yeah, it's a tough one because it's getting better. But I think unless you've got the fundamentals down and you understand how to read code properly and debug it, I think it's dangerous in that respect. And I think that's where a lot of people, and it's human nature, isn't it? That you sort of, I'm always amazed when it'll one-shot a thing. I'm like, oh, that's a bad term, actually. It'll do thing in one go. And I'll just sit there and go, that's incredible. But then you ask it to do another thing, and slowly you realize where the limits are and where you need knowledge to nudge it in the right direction. I think it's certainly a powerful tool. I just think, as with all new technology, we're sort of pushing it beyond its limits at the moment and trying things, and then people will try and make a quick buck off it, and it'll come back around, it'll settle.
I wonder if you can be devil's advocate to that though a little bit, in that I feel like if you map it onto something else, and I always point to these instruments behind, and I sort of think, well, a lot of the time things are not that different. Like if you were writing or more producing a piece of music, it's common to just throw as many ideas as you can at it and create loads of layers, knowing that some of those layers are going to be hidden and taken away. You've sort of got no intention of all of it making it to the end kind of product. And I wonder if that's maybe what's starting to happen to software, where because we can just vibe code things so quickly, it means that the almost the focus is on just that throwing things at the wall, generating as much as you can up front. And that then it becomes this, this entire, the second step of the process really just becomes the like, let's shave down actually what's useful, what's dangerous, what we need to remove right away, what could be a nice little touch at the end, but we can sort of hide it for now, so to speak. I just feel like maybe that's what's happening, because it feels like a natural reaction to someone's on one side able to just create a lot. So the natural reaction is you need somebody there to like shape it and actually make it something useful.
Yeah, I think it's Pareto principle as well on this sort of stuff. Like it will get you 80% of the way there. That last 20% is always 80% of the effort. And I think that's where the human thinking, oh, I'm really close, and not seeing all of the edge stuff makes us think that we could vibe code something into existence, when in reality, you can't unless you've got that depth of knowledge to know how to do that last 20%. And it was like we were talking before the stream about music, and it's amazing. I create diss tracks using AI because I think it's hilarious. I've got a really good one about DevRels, I'll send you both. And they're great up until the 80% rule. None of them would ever be out there in the world as actual finalized music, but they are entertaining, fun, and get the idea there. And I think that's where we are with it. And I think we'll be there for a while on the AI stuff. I think we're now at the gradual improvement stages, even with some of the stuff that Claude's doing lately, which is quite cool.
I mean, the weird thing here is that it's actually mixing processes. When I put my my product manager hat on, like, or my project manager hat, like, throwing things at the wall is normally during the design stage, that you do like paper prototypes, that you do like previews, that you do like most valuable MVP kind of things. And now we're actually trying to cut through that, and it's interesting because we're now technology is so cool, we can rate it immediately, and then we have to rethink it again. You're like, well, maybe the old process wasn't that bad. Maybe it's actually that the amount of times I fought my engineers not starting to code things while the design team was still doing user research, or the UX team was still doing user research, because it made no sense. It was basically for the bin. It was no extra effort. And there is this danger of a vibe-coded interface giving you biases and giving you like golden paths that actually look perfect. But as you said, like the 20% then that bite you in the backside are not actually thought of. And in a paper prototype, that's not an issue. That's easy to amend. But in a vibe-coded environment, you have to rebuild the whole thing from scratch. I think there's a lot of arrogance in there, that we think that UX is not necessary because we can now build on the shoulders of giants. And it kind of feels to that every app will look the same, much like we had when like Baseline or what was the CSS framework, where every website looked the same.
Bootstrap.
Yeah, and that's the danger. That's the danger, isn't it? That we're actually we're shortcutting a whole process, and then we realize, like, oh, actually the parts of the process that build a better product is something we have to add on at the end again. So I wonder where the win is.
I think the win is be the ones who are prepared to do the hard thing. I think we're at a point now where quantity is drowning quality at the moment. But I think, as this title has said, there's efforts being made to clean that up. And I think ultimately, if you're someone who's willing to put that effort in, to put the last bit of polish on, to learn the hard thing, to know the concepts, I think you will come out on top above the people who think, oh, this gives me the easy path, and look at the output I can do. Yeah, that's great now. But you get into a role in a job, and suddenly your server goes down and you've not learned how to debug properly. AI is probably not going to get you out of that sticky wicket if you don't know at least which bits to point it to as a bare minimum. So, yeah, I think do the hard things, and people who have put the effort into learning things more deeply, I think they will win out overall. With AI as assistance, don't get me wrong, I think you have to be using AI now to be competitive. But I think you need to know how to guide it, and you need to know when it's wrong, and you need to be able to call it out when it's hallucinating and making up nonsense. And then you also need to be able to read the damn code, because the amount of times it looks perfect apart from one line, and that one line can be catastrophic 6 months down the line. You have to be able to spot those things.
As you said, like as a junior engineer, I look at something and I'm like, I can't believe it worked the first time. As a senior engineer, like, no, I can't believe it's worked the first time, because it never does.
100%, yeah.
I mean, as developers, we don't do things because they're easy, but we do things because we thought they were easy.
Yeah, that is the life of a developer summed up. You should start doing t-shirts. That'd be great.
I mean, talking about like Cursor and stuff before, like there's now a book out that's actually building with Cursor. That's the public edition. That is an internal Anthropic book. The way when you start working there, then basically this is the onboarding documentation, and now they released that publicly as well. So that's actually pretty cute that they did that. It's a very good book. I have my qualms about this because it all feels a bit like a subscription in disguise. But yeah, it's still interesting that they do that. And then you got the Magic of Claude Code was also an interesting post. And yeah, that basically explains that the biggest difference between Claude Code is that it actually can access the command line and and run tools and get that stuff there. And I find it interesting because most tools, when we started making front end development unnecessarily complex, we always said like, and now go to the terminal and do this. And as Claude Code can do that for you in the inbuilt terminal, I think that is a benefit. But it's also a huge danger to me that actually an AI can start running Unix commands for you without being sandboxed to a degree.
Absolutely, the old joke of oh, how do I remove the French language back? RM, RF.
Yeah.
It's the beauty of the command line is you can do very, very amazing things with it. The scary part about the command line is you can do pretty much everything with it. But I don't think that's an unsolvable problem, and I'm sure they must have thought of it of like critical commands and human in the loop warnings for things that could be potentially dangerous. It's not something I've had a lot of playing with, but I've never seen it do anything that makes me go, oh, stop. Plus, just don't connect it to a production database and you'll be fine. You can't break your local machine much. Even if you wipe the whole thing, you just have to reinstall, and hopefully you're clever and you've got backups.
I mean, most servers these days will be actually set up so RM minus RF on the root will not work at all. One hopes.
Yeah, you'd hope.
Yeah.
I'm going to go test that after this call on our production server. I'll let you know how it goes.
Now, in terms of productivity, this was quite interesting as well. Like to organize your Slack channels by how often and not what. Now, Dan, we both are in Slack deep, and do you think that is an interesting concept rather than like organizing it by department?
Yeah, I do. I mean, we've had it a little bit, haven't we, Chris, when we've spoken about it, about how when you're in the middle of something, these little notifications, they might just be little pings, but they can take you out of kind of the frame of mind that you're in, or even just like from the task. And then I know that sometimes something can come in and I'll think, oh, I'll just do that now. And what has actually happened is I've just stopped what I'm doing so that I can put out another fire and then go back to the original one. But I would have probably been more productive just ignoring that message if it's really not that urgent. So something that can actually do that for me would be useful. I mean, I've not really sort of had a go at doing this myself. Only when I read the article saw you could actually do that in Slack, kind of making those individual kind of filters, So I think I would probably give it a go, to be honest, because something that does that thinking for me to say, don't worry about this, it can wait. Because I'm not great at prioritizing it. They all feel quite important when they pop up to me just because they're all the same notification. So I just go to it. Do either of you sort of do any like filtering, whether it's on Slack or anywhere else, or is it just like everything like in your inbox? Do you auto filter or anything like that? Auto label?
So the only two things I do are, first of all, I don't have any of the apps from work on my phone, so I have full control. And people know that if there's an urgent thing, which is very rare, my mobile number is available to them. They can call me on that. So that's my sort of urgent on fire versus things that can wait. And I think it's a company culture thing. I think the thing is that if you have things that you've got to put in that high priority bucket, then you've probably got something wrong internally in the first place. Like if you need a way to have fires put out, but other than that, everything else is down to, just check your messages 4 times a day. Like if you can get that sort of culture going, I think that solves all of that way easier. It's how I used to handle my emails. When I had my own business, I used to tell all my clients, I don't respond to emails straight away. If you've got an urgent fire, you call. Other than that, I'll respond within 4 hours. Did it ever cause a problem? No, absolutely not. Did it make me way more productive during the day? Absolutely. So yeah, I think it's company culture, not a software problem. There you go. That's controversial.
Which brings us to this: distracting software engineers may be more harmful than managers think. That basically getting people out of the flow is a very dangerous thing. And it's interesting how systems start like Slack, and you're like, okay, it's a text channel, and it's like it has channels, it has threads were then necessary to make it more, and then they put the huddles in. I mean, the first time somebody called me in a huddle, I had no idea what was ringing. Like, I mean, I got 12 different apps on my machine that might be giving me a call, but I didn't know it was a feature. Even worse in Discord, when you just don't know what the hell is making noise right now. I think the arrogance of just saying like, oh, can you have a quick meeting? I need some information from you. That could be an email. maybe just going back and saying like, okay, what do I really need from that person? What is the best way of communicating with them? And Dan, you said it earlier in our startup setup this morning. Like, I'm super diligent with that. I'm like, people saying like, okay, I sent you a DM asking for some information. I'm like, no, you don't. You put it on the main channel. So 5 other people that might actually need to put some input can asynchronously see that somebody has asked for that information, and not just one DM with 2 people where one of them forgets it and then it falls through the cracks. So
Yeah.
the one-on-one is, I think, is the biggest danger to get people out of the loop.
Yeah, and it's the fact that you actually there was like no tolerance with that, right? It was like every time something went into a DM, you would send a message, can this go into a channel? Can this go into a channel? Can this go into a channel? And eventually it seems like now, and I get it, it's just people wanting, like you're saying, getting things done quickly, but eventually it has seemed to like actually affect that culture, because now you're seeing people reminding other people like, just put that in the channel, don't DM it, because people are seeing the benefit and the fact that, you know, Graham, to give you some idea, we've focused a lot on this about how do you join up these different kind of people that are doing separate jobs, but they need to know little bits of information regularly from each other. And also, how do you do that in a way that doesn't then take somebody out of the flow? So I think it's really interesting when it clicks and it works. It's like, why have we not done this the whole time? It was so simple, but it was seeing that was the hard part.
I think the short answer to all of that is, whose time are you valuing more? So if I message you down and say, I need this now, I am valuing my time more than your time. And so that framing in my head was the way that I always tried to approach communication, which is, oh, I'm in the middle of something, I really need that bit of information. That is my problem, not your problem. So unless you said to me, this needs to be done today, and it's the fire that needs putting out right now, I need to be able to adapt and say, right, I've sent down that message, that gets put down for now, and I need to be able to pick that up, and I need to have a method for picking things back up quickly. I think that's the key to most communication in companies.
Yep. And scaling it is the same problem with 50 people and with 5,000 people. That's the weird thing about it. Like, it's just the, how much is your time worth for me? Like, how much do you think my problem is takes priority, not knowing what you're doing? I mean, there was also discussion about like open office and closed offices, and basically it was a very simple concept. Like, you have your headphones on, don't talk to me. I'm actually distracting me because I went into my bubble right now to do things, or I am already on a call. It doesn't help when you have like my hair and you only had the ones that you put in your ears, but like, it's a very, very simple thing to get people there. And yeah, I love open offices. I hated working in like cubicles, like the first time I worked in America. But they are super distracting for people that cannot concentrate on one thing when there is random stuff happening in the background.
You know, they created
No.
a little thing you could plug into your computer for that I thought was hilarious, but also clever. It was literally a button on your desk that you plug in via USB, and it's green, and when you press it, it goes red, and if it's red, you don't disturb me. I was like, that's a brilliant idea. Love it.
That's a really cool one. Yeah. I mean, we had I mean, I love when people do these hardware things. At Yahoo, we had a back post that basically was meowing every time we do the release of the website. Everybody knew, like, okay, something's happening right now. Don't code anything at the moment. So that was pretty cute as well. Talking of esoteric things, I love this one that basically was okay, turn that off. It's a programming language that allows you to whistle and program by whistling into your microphone. So it's a bit like that arrow in Guardians of the Galaxy, and it kind of works. I tried it out. I can't try it out right now, but actually you can whistle different like, I don't know, notes and length, and that one actually turns it into a programming language. And I love that people have time for that.
Yeah. And just the idea. So it's so odd, you know, but I mean, we say this whenever we bring up things like this, that it's like the fact that somebody's had the thought to make it in the first place, because it almost is like the spirit of development at its core. It's like, I have an idea, let's see if this thing is even possible. And I love that, just someone figuring it out as they go. It's great.
And it's an art thing. So he has this book as well called 44 ESOLangs, where esoteric programming languages that he came up with. And I just love that he found a publisher for it. And I haven't read it yet, but I'm actually tempted. This is quite fun to be like totally useless things. I mean, one of my absolute heroes, the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy writers and people behind that, had this meaning of live, where they just made a thesaurus for words that didn't exist, and it's fun to read. It makes no sense, but it's actually fun to read. It's good to waste time from time to time.
Yeah.
I mean,
now the other
that's my code pen, to be fair. Most of my things in code pen I do are completely pointless exercises. You know, I mean, I don't know, playing video from emojis stored in a database on Supabase was probably useful for somebody somewhere, but yeah, you know.
I loved that one personally. I thought that was because it was so bonkers that it was like, okay, let's go with it, and we need more of that. I think, you know, less. Here's how you can do something that you're going to use every day, and here's like an outlier that one day you'll find something that maybe will be, you know, maybe not that exactly, but you know what I mean. There'll be a use one day. You don't need to know what it's going to be used for to pick it up if it's fun to learn and fun to play with. You know, why not?
There is a serious side to that, which is I love that whistling thing, because the reason I do all the stupid things is because there's no tutorial. There's nothing you can follow. You have to learn something, and you have to learn it deeply to know how you can make something do a thing it shouldn't really do. So I absolutely love that whistling thing, because I'm like, wow, there's so many aspects that you would have to understand. Like, how do you capture the pitch? How do you convert that pitch? How do you write basically your own tokenizer for tones and stuff like that? So I absolutely adore stuff like that, because it really lets you learn a thing more deeply than you think you know it. I always learn from doing stupid stuff. So yeah.
Well, it's a bit like Dylan Beattie's Rockstar programming language as well. That was also quite fun to actually see the story behind that one. That was just like, okay, you were drunk in the bar and you thought like, okay, let's make a programming language that only is based on like 1980s hair metal lyrics, and you're like, what is going on? But it's so good.
Well, Arnold Theme was my favorite variation of that theme. I liked Arnold Theme because it like "I'll be back" was to pause and things like that. It was just so clever.
Wonderful. Now the other big splash that was the last week was this game called Messenger. Like, Dan, you got your wife completely hooked on it, right?
Yeah. I mean, she loved the sort of Asian influence, so she wanted to kind of. When I saw it, I was like, she's going to love this. But it's also that kind of cozy game that we looked at last week, and it's been on my mind. You're like going too much of a tangent. Just that, you know, we spend so much time on the internet doing things that are not really very useful and not very helpful for us, don't make us feel good. And so we've kind of, for the last couple of weeks, looked at things that do all of those things, like make you feel good. There doesn't really need to see it be a purpose for it. And this just sums up, I mean, it's just, I love everything about this. It's like the way it looks. It's got kind of nice lo-fi relaxing music. The purpose of the game is just deliver 5 things. That's it. I don't think any rewards. It's quite open world. It surprised me because it's all in the browser, and you could pretty much kind of go anywhere. I tested it by seeing if I could go to the edge of the cliff and like, can I fall in the water and things like that. So there are some limits, but it's just amazing. I thought the most impressive part was the fact that they've made it feel like it's on a globe. So you've got this perspective, you know, and things kind of coming up from the sort of horizon. It's just, everything about it is amazing. Talking about people making things and going, I'm glad that somebody's got the time and inclination. That is, everything about it is 10 out of 10. It's beautiful. Go and play with it. And it's really addictive.
Yeah, I mean, I just realized an accessibility issue. You can't turn off the sound. Like when you were talking, I didn't want to play the sound, and it's like, yeah, it's impossible to do. That's a really annoying thing. I've seen similar things on PlayStation before, and on that thing, somebody also mapped yeah, whatever it's called, Minecraft onto a ball the other day. Like there's a version of that one as well. And I mean, there's like this anime movie with the rolling ball, that kind of stuff. That there's all kind of cool things. But I love that basically it became such a calm thing. I mean, I had something on the Nintendo Switch as well, where it was like an endless world. And you had to collect things and feed animals and just waste time, but like waste time in a beautiful environment. And that one had actually areas where, of course, I did the same thing and tried to get to the end of it. And when you went down a mountain and you went too far, there was actually inscription by the developers: we haven't coded anything in this direction, so you can go back now. I love that. So that's a really
the bit on this game that, and I've seen it on other games as well, and it's one of those that, you know, when you look at something, you go, okay, how on earth do you do that? And I understand how to do a 3D world and everything else. How do you do the outlines on a 3D model? That's the bit that just still my brain can't, and I need to go read how you do it. But like the black outline on a 3D model that knows it must be something to do with the camera direction and knowing that where the different objects are. But yeah, that's the thing that I spent ages looking at, going, how does it work out? I don't get it.
Yeah,
I
you're
think
right.
it's I think it's mostly a renderer. I think there is actually, I mean, there was a few movies that had that, like that ink outline on like watercolor. One of the biggest ones was the Triplets Belleville Rendezvous. That was absolutely gorgeous, and that was basically what's happening there. Okay. My partner just came in and gave me the key to the room, her mobile phone, and her wallet. Okay. Don't know what to do with that, but we can go and party, I guess. Cool. Yeah, but the Messenger, just have a play with it. It's absolutely gorgeous, and it took the internet by storm right now. Talking of like things that taken the by storm, if you actually have macOS 26 and you have there's a scanner that you can use to actually run for outdated Electron apps, because there is a bug in Electron that causes the whole system to lag. So if your Mac is actually slow right now, this is a good thing to try out to find out which Electron-based apps are actually causing that. I mean, Electron is a really cool idea because it was basically allowing us to bundle a browser renderer with the app, so it didn't really matter what operating system you were in there; it had the browser inside it. But it was also in Microsoft, for example, we couldn't use it for Teams because it was a huge security issue because it had really old, outdated Chromium in there. So every time Chrome released, like, here's the patches that we did for this month, it was basically an attack menu to Electron apps that basically had the outdated version of Chromium in there. So that's a very important thing to think right now. If your Mac feels sluggish, that's probably an interesting thing. This was also really cute, that 5 simple fixes that make digital spaces calmer for neurodivergent and all users. Now, we have Graham here, and we talk about accessibility in a larger part as well. I think the neurodivergent bit is something that is kind of new in that world, that people start thinking about it, but it also becomes a more interesting part that people start thinking about it because the newer generation of people talk about it. Like neurodivergent doesn't have that thing anymore that it's like these people are just weird. It's a thing we talk about in main media. And I think in accessibility, we start thinking about it more. Would you agree with that, Graham?
There's actually quite a big push in all of the Workout 3 stuff we're doing to try and cover neurodivergence better. The problem that you come across a lot is that neurodivergence is very diverse. So it's certainly testing the how can you write a rule for this without affecting someone else with another need and someone else with another need, and it ends up, yeah, it's really interesting at the moment trying to get your head around it all. But yeah, it's higher up the conversation, which is great. I think every single person on the planet has some form of divergence from the norm. But obviously, when we talk about this stuff, we're talking with people who have significant divergences from the norm, who then have a requirement for you to code a thing in a way that makes their life better. And I love this list. Apart from the fifth one, just didn't make me feel like it was to do with calmness. It felt like they wanted to do 5. The first 4 really fit the pattern, and the fifth one I looked at and went, how does that make me more the site more calm for me? That's just making it so I can use it if I don't want it, if I can't or don't want to use a mouse. So yeah, I like the list, but that last one threw me.
I guess if you're a keyboard user and you just don't want to get out of your comfort zone, having to use the mouse out of a sudden is something that makes it less calm. But yeah, it feels tacked on. Yeah.
That was Dave's tedious link right there, but yes, I'll give you that one. I'll concede to that.
Yeah, I like the. I mean, this one is my biggest problem. That basically forms and sessions that expire quickly penalize slower users. I hate, for example, Ticketmaster. When I buy a ticket for a conference, for a concert, it tells me you got 10 minutes to fill this form. Why? You know, I know there's security concerns that basically, like, you should take your time once, which is always funny for British people, but like you shouldn't make that too long and these kind of things. But like showing me you got like 5 minutes to buy the ticket and then it becomes more expensive, That's one of those dark patterns you see in those horrible ads that you get on Instagram. Like if you buy for the next 5 minutes, you get a second T-shirt for free, and these kind of things. It feels like pushing people into action rather than just like explain why it's there. And I mean, you took too long to fill the form, and then asking you to refill it. That's also another thing that drives me nuts all the time right now. But yeah, that's a classic case of making your problem the problem of the user, right?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because there's some work by a guy you may have come across on YouTube called Todd Libby, and he has spearheaded and worked with others on a section of the new WCAG that will be very difficult to get right, but it's deceptive patterns. What you were saying there was literally one of the things that was under the list of unneeded urgency or fake urgency was one of the deceptive patterns. And so it's a very interesting area. So when that gets released in a draft, it's worth reading because there's there are definitely problems on the internet, but how we would test for them is very difficult. So it's been quite an interesting one to look at as well. So yeah, if you want to look up Todd Libby, deceptive patterns, he's written a lot of blog posts about them for people who are listening.
This one was doing the rounds as well, and I was confused about this, that he's like, oh, best kept secret is the output tag. I've been using the output tag forever because it's kind of a live region, but it also just makes sense to do like the result of a calculation or the result of an interaction in an output element. I mean, Dan, you were surprised when I showed it to you, right? You didn't know about it either.
No, it's not one that it's funny as well because it's like you see input, you would think logically you would have output as well. You know what I mean? Like it's surprising we don't think of it, but no, it's one that I honestly can't think of when I've last or if I've used it. I can't think of a time when I have. It's almost definitely been that I've just used something that has fit my kind of need, but actually output would have had kind of more functionality to it, or I haven't really looked into kind of like what it would give me other than it being maybe more semantic, you know. But yeah, it's again, it's one of those things of like, you know, we get used to just using certain kinds of elements or certain features, don't we? And then we kind of actually overlook ones because maybe they just don't take off or become commonplace because the benefits maybe aren't that clear to the average user. Like me right now, I'm saying, what is the benefit to using it, you know?
And that's again where it gets tricky, isn't it? Like that update, like some screen readers doesn't use it, that needs an output role equal status. And that always drives me nuts. Like that kind of message is like, okay, it's the screen reader's issue to a degree. We need something like baseline for screen readers, which we have as well, but it's really hard to research. But this is where I always get stuck when I try to get people to embrace semantic HTML, because we always find an issue with some unique browser screen reader combination where it doesn't work, and then we have to write random HTML in that doesn't make any sense to a normal user. And this was always my biggest frustration when it comes to telling people about accessibility and semantics. Graham, what's your take on that? Like, there's always one issue where it doesn't work, right?
Yeah, you're pushing all my buttons there. I've got to the stage where I tell people follow spec. I've given up caring, and I know that sounds awful, but I've given up caring of foibles between different browsers and different screen readers because I don't see that as the developer's problem. If you are following the spec and the spec says this is how a thing should work, why should you as the developer then have to work around things? We fixed most of that with browsers now. You know, we've still got can I use, but in reality, most stuff becomes evergreen on all browsers very quickly. I think it's down to the browser vendors and the screen reader vendors to fix those foibles. So I just say, write it to spec, and if it doesn't work in a certain screen reader, yes, I will admit that may exclude someone. But I don't think it's fair for a developer to spend 4 hours trying to fix a thing that is not their fault when they've got so many things to learn and we're so far behind the curve on accessibility that I just want people to engage with it and do the thing and, you know, not have to worry about that. So yeah, that role equal status triggered me instantly. The other problem I was having to play with it was you have the same problem with that you do where if you have multiple live regions on a page and there's lots going on, it can break in some browser combinations and screen reader combinations, and it becomes another live region. So that's another consideration that, yet again, I don't think a developer should have to think about. It should be handled via the browser or the screen reader. But you do have that consideration. If you have 6 or 7 of them on a page and they all update, you will find very odd behavior. It's a known problem with live regions.
Well, then you got the different roles, like saying like assertive and like not important. I don't know the names right now. But
this is counted as polite, the output element, so that it does equivalence there. But if you've got 2 or 3 other polites on a page and they all announce something at the same time, the browser screen reader combos don't always know what to do with them and might drop messages or might put them in weird orders, or it's a known fun thing where you end up building message queues and using just a couple of regions on a page because of it. So yeah, it's fun. And yet again, I don't think it's something a developer should have to even worry about. I think it's you build it to spec, put 50 ARIA live regions on a page if you want. As long as you've coded them right, you've done your bit.
But that's the problem. Like a lot of people saw ARIA as like the catch-all to make things accessible. Like rather than just like using the proper semantics up front, you took a diff and put an ARIA live region on it, and like and is something else and is something else because of that messaging. I mean, Adrian is a very, very good person at that. Like every time we do something cool in the browser, and if we support something, he comes up with like, not ready yet, dangerous to use, don't do it yet. And you're like, how can we get people to embrace semantics ever? Because they're never going to be perfect in every outdated browser and screen reader combination out there. So it's great to give that information where it breaks, but these things live forever, and sadly enough in an LLM world even longer, because the 4-year-old things have been indexed. The new ones where we say like it's not a problem now anymore will probably not be in a ChatGPT.
Yeah, I mean the short answer is we need enough effort behind accessibility, and I hold myself accountable here as well because I've never really looked to polyfill these problems. So that you as a dev, you know, that we don't polyfill as much anymore, but that used to be the thing that you did to fix Internet Explorer 6. You polyfilled everything. So we should polyfill the way things are meant to be coded, and then you as a dev can just code the damn thing and put a polyfill in. And that would be a big step in the right direction. But they're very hard things to polyfill. That's the problem with them. Anyway, don't get me started. Don't get me started.
Other bits I found interesting is like what people forgot. Like this is an interesting little post where it's just like, here's what you need to be make a PWA to make it installable on Android and iOS. And this is like, I mean, when HTML5 came out, 2013, we wrote books about this, and this is nothing new, but it seems like this made the rounds in like 5 different newsletters, and people are just like, oh, I did not know about this. And I'm like, how did you not know about this? Was it too complex? Was it too weird? I mean,
I think the problem that happened with service workers was not getting a PWA working. It was trying to store data offline and syncing it with the server. And there were many attempts to solve that, but I can't think of a library that you didn't have to jump through hoops to make it work. And I think if we'd solved that or made it simple, I think they'd have exploded and it would have been much more prevalent than it is. I used them a lot. I thought they were great. I used them an awful lot for using a service worker to go off and prefetch the pages before we had that built into the browser. So you can make your apps lightning fast by using service workers and PWAs. But yeah, that is the issue for me. And I never saw anyone solve it perfectly, where you're offline, you want to store data, and then you want to sync it to a server. And that is a hard problem to solve. But if we'd had a good library for that, I think it would have exploded. I really do.
Well, I mean, we had the whole like we made everything into a granular bit. Like we allowed you control over everything, because before that we had black magic with like app cache that didn't work. And and then by giving people a chance to do everything, the documentation just explodes into so many chapters that people are just like, yeah, I can't be bothered. And then things like Firebase came out and said like, we do it for you. But Dan, I interrupted you. You were saying?
No. I mean, I was just thinking then about, something like this is quite useful because of the fact that when you see so many of these sort of boilerplate systems that are going around at the moment that are trying to say to people like, this is all you need to get something off the ground. Usually it's like a React based app with some kind of auth thrown in and like, you know, some boilerplate code to sort of, do your API calls. This actually is quite nice because it's kind of a true minimalist approach, right? Where, you know, it's just giving you in its own words, like just what you need or something like that. Rather than trying to do this whole like it's a boilerplate, because with that comes usually it's got like it's a landing page and you can just change the words. And you know, we're going back into that idea of like there's nothing wrong with you having some minimal boilerplate to get you off the ground, but if you're just using what really is just a template, but then pitching it as this is my, you know, built from the ground up app that I've built for my startup, etc. You know, rather than just saying what it is, or using something like this where it just gets the bare bones, the headache portion of building done, and then you actually build your own on top of it. So I really like it, even if it's not something I've used before.
I mean, I was wondering what the hell that Canvas stuff was about, but yeah, it's basically Safari needs a startup image. Again, it's Safari.
I was literally about to say, and I hadn't even noticed that comment there. I was about to say the other problem of why this didn't take off was Apple, and pretending they were doing it for the security and the good of the world, but in reality, they didn't want this to work because then the App Store wouldn't have made as much money. So I remember putting it so that it would have the install on your home screen, and it would work on all the Android devices, but on Apple, it would be whenever it felt like it, and there was never really any good answers to when it would and would not show up. And things like that. So I feel like Apple held this back, and I think it's a real shame because I think it would have made a lot of development a lot easier, and then we could have spent more time on accessibility. You know, got to tie it somehow.
I mean, we could Bruce Lawson in here again and together with Alex Russell and talk about Apple for a few hours, but I don't think any of it would be actually publishable on YouTube. Because there is a big thing against the Apple is just not making any friends at the moment in that space, and it's back to square one, it seems. And yeah, it's sad because I mean the other thing, of course, is when you actually think about the mobile market, why everybody wants to have Apple is because Apple users spend much more money than Android users. Like Apple users, for some degree, are actually happy with spending money, whereas Android users want everything to be 99p. And yeah, I mean, it's a bit like Macs, and then you just say like, okay, I need a new cable, and it's like £70 for a cable, and you're like, what the hell is going on there? But people swallow it and basically say that's fine. That makes sense for quality. It's a cable.
If you want the best one, I've got a very expensive Mac sat right down there. And because Apple is so awkward, first of all, I had to get the Mac Pro because that's the only one that will support 3 monitors. And secondly, it doesn't blooming work with the KVM switch that we bought 3 different KVM switches through work. So I cannot switch between my Windows and Mac machine. So that is being donated to another team member. I've had it for a year and not been able to use it because I can't get it to work with these 3 monitors through a KVM. And that's just Apple being Apple. And it's frustrating because I really wanted to use it because it's pretty. But no, I'm a Windows boy again now.
I mean, I've got a Mac Mini, and this is my Air, and I'm impressed with what it can do. I mean, the video production stuff that I do is just ridiculously good on it. And yeah, I mean, I live in the terminal most of the time, so when I worked on Windows, PowerShell was not my friend. It just felt weird. But that's just maybe because I'm old and set in my ways. I don't know.
I'll say yes to that. But no, it's there are problems. Like it would be better for me to be on a Mac because like we have to run WSL on everything, so that we were having loads of conflicts between something would run fast on a Mac, but interestingly, it wouldn't run the same on Intel Silicon versus Apple Silicon. So we'd find out that on all those dev machines, things were slower, or it would behave a different way. And so recently, we had to switch everyone over to WSL because it was causing more and more problems. And that adds its own level of problems because then you've got loads of your system memory gets eaten by WSL that doesn't free up in the same way as Windows memory. And whenever you do a check on the system memory, it counts the whole system memory, not the stuff that's in WSL and things like that. So yes, I would love to be on Mac, but yeah, sadly, they like to make sure that you can only buy MacBook monitors, and I have 3 43-inch monitors. I am not dropping a house's worth of money on monitors just so I can use Apple.
Yeah, I mean the WSL is another interesting thing. It was great when that came out because it basically it transported Windows into a much different space that every Linux and Mac user can actually start using Windows as well with that. But it is a VM inside your system to a degree. It's basically running Linux inside the terminal, and that of course comes with performance changes. They did a great job making it better, and I love that it's open source. I want to see more of that kind of stuff coming from Microsoft, but right now they put like an AI agent into everything, and that's basically their plan for the world, I think.
Let's just go back to DOS. Life was easier when everything was DOS. That's my rose-tinted glasses of what the world used to look like, but it's really not true. It's really not true.
I found some old hard drives the other day, and I found index.html in uppercase because I wrote it on a DOS machine back then. And
Wow.
it was just, yeah, wow.
Did you ever, though, Chris, do what I did when I was about 13, which is spend all day on a Saturday converting an HTML file by hand to uppercase because I just thought it looked nicer? And I didn't. I just did the entire file until I refreshed the page. Yeah, I was like 13, and I thought this just looks way better with this nice sort of Courier New font or whatever I had. Yeah, there you go. See how far I've come. Now I only spent half a day.
Not
Hey,
bad,
Dan,
yeah.
you've got started now. HTML used to be uppercase.
Yeah,
HTML yeah.
Yeah,
And then
all the W3C documentation still is in uppercase.
I need to see this.
The code examples, yeah.
Yeah. And then the interesting thing is then they changed it at one point so that it was case sensitive. So you could have div with all lowercase that would only close with lowercase, and then you could have div with a capital D that would only close with a capital D. So you could do some really funky, messed up stuff. That only happened a little while. I can't remember when that happened, but that was really fun. So yeah.
Well, I remember when an absolutely positioned div in Netscape became a layer without using the layer element. That was the other thing, because you had like document frames, document layer for different IE and Netscape. And yeah, layers were an interesting one because they all had a source. So basically it was like an iframe before we had an iframe. But yeah, let's not go back into these worlds.
Yeah, I definitely didn't write HTML uppercase. I'd have to find out exactly when that was happening because I'm really aging myself here. But
we're talking HTML1, Dan. It's before my time as well. But originally, it was all uppercase, which was really hard to read. Like paragraph tags just look odd with a capital P.
Yeah.
Tangents as always.
Yeah, and I mean, we had really weird elements. There was at one time a signature element that allowed you to actually do a digital signature in the screen, and that never went anywhere. We had like the KBR element, which allowed you to create a key frame for a secret, and there's all kind of stuff that actually came and went. There's some I think it was still BT as well gave a good talk about that. And
the marquee element, though, don't you think? Like, I miss the marquee element. That was the best part of the internet when they brought that.
Well, you still can use CSS for it. I mean, CSS has still the display marquee.
No, because then I can't put it into my GitHub. Like, I like to abuse my GitHub profile and do what I can with that. So, I need the marquee element so I can have flashing things on the page that are bad for people with disabilities. Stuff like that.
It got really interesting when you started nesting marquee elements. Then it got really cool. Yeah, specificity, I think, was always the biggest problem of anybody pronouncing it. And last week I found a specificity tutorial. I thought this was solved, but it seems like people are still wondering about it. I think if they put enough importance there.
My argument against this is I don't think it is solved. I don't think people understand it, because if they did, I don't think we'd have Tailwind. And I know that's a very dramatic claim, but I truly think that if people understood the cascade part of CSS, that we would just write CSS. I think that's also the bit that makes Tailwind so good for people, is that because the cascade part is so hard to understand and you end up with side effects when you don't understand it, Tailwind eliminated that, introduced all sorts of other issues, obviously, but that's why I think it gained so much popularity. And I think truly, if the courses taught you how the cascade worked and how specificity worked, I think it would be a solved problem. I've seen very large code bases that use pure CSS and they don't have problems with collisions because they just scope thing to a parent and they make sure the parent classes are unique, and other than that, there's no thoughts. But yeah, so yeah, I feel quite strongly that if people took the time to read that article, they would feel a lot more confident with CSS overall.
I think
that
well, I think it was a different approach. I mean, when people started saying like, "Oh, we all built Facebook, we're not actually making websites anymore, so we need components," the whole like the cascading part of CSS was actually their enemy, because they didn't want to have a component that would have styles bleeding into it from other places. That's how we got web components as well, because they thought it's like it has to have a styling that's independent of the main page, basically robbing CSS of its power.
Which my argument would have been, well, no, if they'd actually thought about it, it would have been way better, because they could have just thrown a new component out with just HTML if they'd got it right. But yeah, we could argue all day long about that. Yet again, I don't think there's anything specifically wrong with either way of approaching the problem, especially in a component-based world. But at the same time, it does just frustrate me when it's like, oh yeah, we want to change all the paddings on the site, and you think, oh, that should be easy, and then you absolutely bang your head against a wall because some of them are defined one way, some of them are designed the other. And if you used, there's a second part to this, which is, I think CSS vars combined with the cascade are some of the most powerful things that you can do, but I don't think enough people know CSS vars as well. And I think if people just understood those two concepts in the box model, they could do everything they need to do far easier with far less CSS, and it would just be dandy. But hey, do what works for you.
We just had the discussion earlier. Dan is writing an article right now, and he had this one thing where he needed the mouse position in CSS. And I actually pointed out, instead of accessing with JavaScript the style collection, what I normally do is I create a CSS variable, or like a custom attribute, and basically just change that in JavaScript and then let the CSS code do the rest. And I think far too many people just basically think you need JavaScript to access elements and find the elements in the DOM first, instead of just using a custom attribute and change that one on the root element and let CSS do the rest. It seems like that's a trick that's hasn't come through too much either.
Yeah, and combine that with the fact you can do multiplication, and you can do light mode and dark mode in like one line, and do it across the whole app and change all your colors like just one-liners. But again, that is more complicated. I can understand that, and it becomes you're muddying things. But still, I do think that honestly, anyone who is listening, read that article, then go read up about CSS vars, and then have a play and just see if it changes your mind of whether you should be doing CSS versus the Tailwind method, which is absolutely fine in its own right, but I think causes its own issues that at scale become problems.
Do you think we make CSS too hardcore into the rendering nowadays? I mean, I had to get my head around layers, and it feels like a lot of people are super confused about it because it feels like writing OpenGL to a degree. I love that we have the granular control, but with it comes complexity, and I think that's something that takes people off. It gets people in there and like, what the hell? This is too complex. I'm just going to use Tailwind and put like 50,000 classes on something that are unreadable because that's a better way of building things.
Yes, I think so. I still, the thing is, you still have to learn all those classes, so I don't think it is the root cause. I do think things like transform and stuff like that were very complex to get your head around, which is your X, Y, and Z axes, and that ended up breaking my brain on many occasions. And obviously, we had problems with floats and stuff back then, which were just horrendous. I think nowadays, I don't know. I think if you're writing Tailwind, I think you're a millimeter away from being able to write the CSS, to be honest, because it does align reasonably well with it.
I remember when that came out, that's the thing that I wrote to explain to people how it's done and generate the code, so you can basically just rotate it in all the things and get the code generated. And that was something I wrote for Mozilla MDN back then, because it was fun when we got 3D transformations, and it took people ages to understand what the hell is going on. But this was good. This was good fun to build.
I like the little subtle naming of was it an ID or a class down there that was Up Yours Cache, I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that. That's definitely yours, Chris.
I've got I'll put it in the private chat because I've not linked everything properly. This is how far CSS has come. You did the 3D cube there. I did the 3D cube with one div, which is absolutely mind-blowing what you have to do to be able to do that. I hate that they don't click OK. Dev with the horrible pattern there. Yeah, so that there, I am having to calculate which face is showing because you can only do a before and after and the div itself. You can only render 3 faces. So obviously, as that rotates, I have to then switch which side the face is on and do loads. And that's how far CSS is coming. So yeah, don't.
Oh my God, nice.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's flickering and it looks a bit wrong as well. Like, I mean, that there's like this subtle, like, why is it so slow turning? I don't understand that. But then whenever I do things like that, then Anna Tudor comes up with a one-liner that's completely unreadable that works really fast, and I'm like, okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I think CSS could have probably neatened it up, but yeah, it's effectively ray tracing, working out which is the front face, and then we just use CSS to switch which backend. But that is how far you can go. I would argue that most people should never go anywhere near stuff like that because it's completely pointless and will break your brain and take you weeks to work out how to do it. Yeah.
Okay, so you got the ray tracer working. You got the walking cube next. Like,
I am trying to work out how to do collision detection in CSS because I really want to. Anyway, that's another thing. Yeah, I'm trying to work that one out next.
I mean, when I wrote games, like HTML5 games, I did this racing game with like cars that drove around a track. And of course, there was always the like, okay, where's the car and what's around it? But then I realized the easiest way is actually have the racetrack as a black and white canvas in the background and actually read the color of the 10 pixels around the car. And if one of them is white, then they're off the track and they're crashing. So that was a much faster way than doing it and recording and trying to find all the things around the car. So have like a mask of the game map in black and white, and then basically just read the pixel colors around you. That was a much faster way of doing it.
Cool. I'll go and have a play with that because I feel like I can do that with CSS bars and a grid of things and scary, lots of horrible CSS. But yes, thank you. That's a nice idea. I'll have a see if it works.
We are a lot over time, but I don't care because this is too much fun. So let's talk about accessibility a bit. The primary threat for accessibility on the web is neglect. I haven't read it yet, but I kind of guess where they're going with it. Like it's we start something, we make the accessible bit, and then we forget about it. Have you looked into it?
I think the threat for accessibility on the web is ignorance, and I don't mean ignorance in any wrong way. I mean that it is not the reasons for it and the things that you need to know are not taught in the first place. So people are unawareness is probably fairer than, or lack of awareness is fairer than ignorance. And then when someone does come across it, it is often framed as oh, this is something you have to do. Not this is why you should do this thing, because most devs want to provide the best user experience they can. And when you start framing it as, oh, this means that people who are a keyboard-only user because they've got Parkinson's disease and can't use a mouse, they go, oh, okay. But until that's framed and it's brought to the front, I think that's the biggest threat that we have to accessibility. It's just, it isn't spoken about. And most of these boot camps, well, you did a boot camp, I think, didn't you, Danny, right at the beginning?
No, I didn't. But I definitely I looked into them a little bit, and yeah, it was a bit of a thing at the time. It's kind of like it is with a lot of like university courses, right? They do like a module on it, and there's some sort of belief that when you finish that module, well, now I know all about that, and I think there's no real incentive for people to then sort of push it further, because if so much of the world now is people saying like, here's what I've done, then they try and show you something that's like really tangible and like, oh, I can see that you've done that thing. And accessibility is, well, I've done something for a relatively small but important group of people that will use this application, and so you probably won't notice the difference. And so I think that it's maybe just like we're not incentivizing people to actually show those things, because they're harder to prove, but also the use for it is usually not the person you're showing it to that's going to benefit. That's my impression of it anyway.
I think there's a second thread I've come up with. It's quite an insidious one, and this is quite a what's the word I'm looking for? Spicy take. I think the accessibility community itself is a threat to accessibility, because I have seen lots of devs who will try and make something accessible, and I've fallen foul of this myself, and then tell the world that they've done a thing, and someone will pick a hole in it, and they will do it in such a way that is so demoralizing you may not want to continue. So the only thing I'll say is, if anyone out there is playing with accessibility and you want someone who's going to champion you rather than shout at you and help you find the things that you've got wrong in the right way, please feel free to find me on Twitter and DM me with what you've built, and then I can help you. I don't want you to be the one who puts it in the world and someone goes, this isn't right, and oh, you forgot about this, and oh, you're a terrible person, why did you even bother? It's a huge problem we have, and it comes from frustration, and I understand it, but it doesn't get people excited like I am about accessibility. Once you get into it, it's fascinating and fun and interesting, and feels really good when you actually get something out there that's accessible, because you know that someone in the world is going to benefit from that. But while you're learning it, yeah, you'll get shot down a lot and it hurts. And so, yeah, I think that's a big problem we have as well.
I wrote about that some time ago, a few times, I think, over the years. And it's even more frustrating with accessibility talks and accessibility conferences. I can't be bothered to go to a pure accessibility conference. In America, they're super expensive because they're all government sponsored and people have to go there to learn about new things. In Sweden, it was similar as well. And it was like 2,500 euro a ticket for a one-day conference. And it was only people from government, people there because they had to go to learn about accessibility and new laws coming out. And it was very frustrating to give a technical talk there. But the other thing that I wanted to point out, the amount of conference talks that I've seen that cover accessibility and are amazing and are beautiful, and everybody should see these things, never saw the light of day because the PowerPoint wasn't perfectly accessible, or the video didn't get transcribed, or the video didn't have sign language translation at the same time. Like accessibility conferences try to do everything right before they publish something. So tons and tons of really good information for developers out there who don't have a disability never saw the light of day because people tried to make it perfect for anybody to be there. A blind person doesn't actually need to know how talk about how screen readers work because they're using it. A developer who's basically doesn't even have empathy for people not being able to see the screen might have learned something from that talk. Not releasing that talk because the video isn't perfectly captioned or the PowerPoint wasn't 100% accessible is just so frustrating to me, and I see it over and over again.
Yeah, progress is better than perfection, and unfortunately like I said, I know where that comes from. I understand it. It's been a battle for centuries, and most recently the last 30 years, and I understand it's draining. But I also think there's also an element of the holier than thou crowd that like accessibility for that also need to disappear from the accessibility community. We need people who actually have the needs, who explain what the needs are, and we have people who try and implement them needs, and then people have a conversation and go, that won't work for me because that's all it needs. Unfortunately, we're not in that place at the moment. So, yeah, I think those are the threats. And I've gone a bit too far into that one because it makes it sound like you should avoid accessibility with a barge pole, and you certainly should not. There are far more nice and supportive people than there are the nasties. Just, if you get a nasty, just ignore them. Yeah, that's basically.
Let's talk about this WCAG's Longevity by Eric Eggert. I haven't read it, but it did the rounds. A lot of people it seemed to resonate with. What was it about?
So it's about the audio described video. So that is a video, and if someone is poor vision or blind, you have extra descriptions describing what the scene is in the video. And the problem is, if you have a very long, like I am doing now, where there are no pauses and breaks, if I showed a visual on the screen, there is nowhere to insert some very quick spoken words that say, Graham, he's waving his hands around like an idiot. So it's an overhang from Workout 2 where it was written in a way where it was probably expecting the larger companies who had budget to do recuts of things were able to insert extra bits of time or change a scene to be slightly longer so that you could insert this stuff. So it's saying that basically Workout 2's long-lived because we think about fundamentals, but there are still problems with it. And it's one of the things we're actually in the middle of a group discussion on, the whole group who are working on Workout 3, on where do we think we land on this. Like, if you've created a video that does not have space for audio descriptions, are we going to write a rule that requires that you must insert space, or are you going to say it's an exception? And it's a very hard decision to have because we know what we'd like to say, but there's an element of pragmatism of, is it feasible to say to, like you, for example, oh yeah, we want you to do an audio described version of this podcast. You won't have the budget for it, you know, or if you did, you certainly wouldn't have time to be editing and adding bit sections in. Your best bet is you could probably get someone to do the voiceover of describing what's on the screen. So it's, yeah, stuff like that. That's the sort of stuff we grapple with at length. And they're very long conversations because you can imagine we all have a different opinion. But this is how it's made in the end. It's a lot of to and fro, and then we find what we think is the best middle ground on stuff. So yeah, it's an open discussion. Feel free to read that article, and if you have a thought, throw it in, which way you think it should go, because we're voting on it at the moment and we can't make our minds up.
I mean, there's also the other longevity part that I thought it was to a degree in it as well. Like when I think about when you talk about shorts and TikToks, they're not meant to be done for eternity. They're not meant to have longevity. The whole social media market moved from longevity creation of content to addictive things that get forgotten 10 seconds later. And it feels like, and when you have a conference, for example, like ours, you got 4,500 hours of footage, and we're like, okay, what do we do about captioning? What do we do about subtitling? What we do about describing? And then you see, like, you spend, or like smaller conferences, when I saw the prices for things, when you spend like $1 a minute for like proper casting, proper captioning. And then you upload the thing that you spent like $400 for, and 3 people watch it within 2 months. Like, what's the return of investment there? Is that the question? Like, I think that's to me is a big accessibility issue we have to answer nowadays. What do we do about viral content that's meant not to live long? Is it even worth doing, or is it? I mean, it is blocking people out is always an issue. It's always a legal issue as well. But if the content is never meant to be actually used differently, it's a very bizarre world to be in. But yeah, the describing things. I remember I did that. I watched like a Marvel movie once with a description on a plane, and I chose the wrong audio channel. It was like the Marvel logo swooshes in with like pictures of all superheroes, and it was like 5-minute explanation of just the Marvel logo. And I think that's grand that we have those things, but it feels like a lot of effort for, not much use for people in the first instance. Later on, when you want to watch it, I watch movies with the director's commentary afterwards, but that's because I'm a freak. It's an interesting bit to see, like, what can we do about those, about the shorts and the TikToks of this world.
So you're the one person that they do the director's commentary for. Great. I did wonder why they did that stuff. So that's good. It's such a conversation that we can't have, unfortunately, because that's one of the, like I said, the hardest things is, where's the pragmatic line on this? Because no matter what, you sound like an awful human being when you go, well, if I've got 5 views, why should I bother? And it's like, then the argument is, well, what if one of those viewers has the need? And then you've got to argue, yeah, but it cost me £400. Is that one viewer worth that need? And then it's like, are you trying to say that I'm not worth £400? And there is no right answer. But I do think, because these things become law, and because it then puts people off, because it sounds so overwhelming, that we do need to have the pragmatic conversation. And I've been trying to push to have that as part of the workout guidance, but I'm not getting very far. Of, if the video has over 1 million views, you must also provide an audio described version, was my sort of pitch. And it got shot down very hard. But that's my sort of pragmatic view of, if you've had 1 million views, you've probably got $50 in revenue. And I think you should invest that $50 in getting someone to put some quick like audio described version together, and then you can link to it. But also the platforms don't make it easy either. You know, it's getting better. But I'd love if YouTube said, upload your audio described version alongside, and it sits in the same place as the captions, rather than you having to upload 2 different videos, because then channels have to make the decision, oh, do I want to do that? Because that might interrupt my main audience. Or, oh, I need to run a second channel, but then I need to promote the second. You know what I mean? So it's like, we haven't solved it at the fundamentals to make it easy for creators to go and go, oh, this is what I should do. And I think it should be like YouTube saying, you should do this thing. And if you do this thing, you'll get more views because we'll promote your video more. Like, they could lead the charge if they wanted to.
But then again, I mean, that's always the cop-out as well, that people say like, well, YouTube generates captions automatically. They should be good enough. And most of the time they're not. But that's another big thing that a lot of people that don't understand the need for accessibility keep banging on about how amazing AI is, and it will be able to do that. Like an audio description of a video could be done with AI, I guess, but holy shit, that's going to be expensive to actually make each frame analyze what's on there and say what it is, rather than just turn the audio track into a text. Can be done. There's probably models out there that do it quite well, but it's interesting that like there's a lot of stuff going on like that research that is just there to show us better ads, but we don't get the generated captions automatically, for example. Like there's a lot of like video analysis going on, but it's not going back into the publishers. To the publishers, it's just going into the algorithm which ad to show with next to it.
Yeah, which is frustrating a whole other kind of fish. But there's something you said there that I'll challenge it, which is the automatic captions are not good enough. And I will argue that with the stage they're at now, that they're not as good as a professional transcriber, but they are better than most people if they try to do it themselves.
Yeah.
They're timed correctly, that makes the odd word incorrect, but you can understand what is going on from the automated captions now. And so I'll push back and say, yeah, they're not perfect, but that's half the problem we have in accessibility is we're saying things aren't good enough. And I'm going, I can watch a video with automated captions with no audio, and I can know what's happening, and I can get 95% of the experience. Is 95% of the experience enough? And the accessibility person in me is going, no. But the pragmatist is going, well, yes, because the alternative is no captions. And I'm going, let's just celebrate the wins. I think AI is amazing for that. I'm going to put a bold claim on there, which is I think AI is going to fix a lot of accessibility on websites in the next few years. I think having it on the side.
It was Jim Nielsen said as well with the UX problem. That's I think like that accessibility is such a complex topic that in essence it should be up to the operating system or AI to build custom-made interfaces for people, rather than you having to build one interface that actually is the one to rule them all. And I've seen that in content. I mean, when you go to newspaper websites or you go to like video content websites, the front page doesn't look the same for everybody. It's actually customized to every user anyways. So the interface learning from me, this is where I think AI is really exciting. Like pressing the same button 5 times, or pressing 5 different buttons in sequence, the system should recognize that and say like, hey, how about I make you a button so you don't have to press 5 buttons any longer? Like this is where this really, I mean, everybody goes about like we need the thinking machine. I'm like, no, let's have thinking interfaces. Let's have interfaces that cater to my needs as I use them, rather or learn from my usage of them, and then give me the right sequences that way. Yeah, they're good enough, but the other problem is then we always try to then shorthand it. I mean, I see when like, oh yeah, our AI can understand 187 languages. Nobody can understand 187 languages, and the results are terrible. Have you ever tried to do an English-Polish translation with Google Translate? Where I tried to talk to a cleaner once, it's impossible. It's basically, and those are two languages where we got shitloads of content to train the AI on. But it's like saying it's solved is the problem. But saying, as you said, like rather than no caption, I totally agree with that.
And it's the nuance, isn't it, that's lost by any of these services. So yes, again, if we were to build something in the future that can take the HTML and the code of a web page and the layout and do some vision learning and bring it all together and then build whatever interface I need for my requirements, I'm going to lose some of the nuance, no matter how clever we make this thing. But I still think that is a stronger answer on how we solve accessibility than the way we're currently handling it, because we've been trying it for 25 years and it's just not worked. We can say it has, but it hasn't. And I think that AI is strong enough now that we are not a million miles off having all the pieces to be able to just go onto any website, take a screenshot, overlay the code underneath and work out that's a clickable button, even if it's not a button, work out that it's a clickable area. And then it can redesign the interface and go, oh, you need very large text. I'll build you a fluid design version of this page with very large text. And I can still do the thing I went there to achieve, even if it is not quite equivalent. And I know that's very, very controversial, but I think that's the way we win on accessibility, short term, at least.
Yeah, I'm an angel investor in a company that does that. That basically that's like design to code generation. And what I loved most about them is that they had like 20 years experience of natural language processing, and they actually trained their model on like millions of websites of saying like, this is a button, this is a button, this is a button, and then basically recognize that's a button and create a proper button element, and then put type equals button in there because Safari wouldn't recognize it as a button otherwise.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah.
Now, a lot of people are currently freaking out about the European Act on Accessibility. Can you give us a bit of a 10-mile overview of what that means for people? Do they have to care more about accessibility, or what's the change that you want to have?
I'm freaking out about it too, don't worry. But for different reasons. What does it change? For 99% of the people listening, absolutely diddly squat. These things were already in place in different ways. They've just crystallized it. It was already everything applied that currently applies from WCAG and laws that were in place under the Equality Act, etc., or the equivalent in your country. So it doesn't change much unless you are in fintech countries at the moment, and perhaps Germany, I'm not sure, where there are new reporting procedures for accessibility problems that you are meant to follow. And I say meant quite loosely because, as far as I know, very few companies are actually doing what they're meant to do, even if they care about accessibility, because it's quite scary. You've got to fill in a massive long form to say, oh, we know we have this accessibility problem. But you're basically saying, but I'm not going to fix it yet, because the second you fill that form out, you might as well fix the problem. So it's really odd. It targets a lot more on e-commerce and essentials, so things like government websites, communications, banking, billing. So yeah, again, they have been named as you have more responsibility and more requirements now. But for your average person listening to this, it's the same as it was before, which is make your site comply with WCAG 2.2 the best you can, and you'll be fine. And you may have to do a VPAT if you're a big enough company and things like that, which is, yeah, great fun and a lot of work for no real reason other than you get to say, we know we have these problems yet again, which is, you can probably tell I'm not on the side of broadcasting, we have these problems. I'd rather spend all that effort fixing the damn problems than just telling people that we have them. But yeah, that's my interpretation of what I care about in the European Accessibility Act. There is a lot more nuance to it than I have given there. But generally for you, the sort of audience we have here, you probably don't need to pay much attention other than do accessibility things, which you should have been doing anyway.
Yeah, one thing I find is that moving from WCAG 1 to WCAG 2, it became much more tangible and understandable. It became much more less academic and more of a like, here's your checklist that makes you weep. to like make it available, make it sensory independent, these kind of things. And I think WCAG 3 is going in that direction as well, where it's more like here's a pragmatic approach to it, because we know you cannot make it 100% accessible, but here's guidelines how to get in that direction.
We've been round the houses on many options, but the underlying tone is exactly what you said, which is, do we do scoring? Do we do a core set of things that you must do, and then these are bonus things that get you higher rankings? So it's still in flux on how we want to approach that, because everything's got pros and cons. But the idea is, here are the things that are dangerous to someone, like flashing images, or like things that may cause harm is the next sort of bubble, which is movement on a page for someone with vestibular disorders can make them feel ill and sick, throw up, etc., disorientated. So we're doing like an onion at the moment on things, and we're trying to decide how much of the onion is the essential you must that we're going to say, and then how much of it is do as much of this as you can and get praise for it, and find some way of getting praise for it. Because the problem with WCAG 2 is, if you're trying to get to AA and you've got one thing on your site that doesn't pass one of the criterion, you don't have AA status. And it's very off-putting if that is a thing that is almost impossible to solve within your current budget, stroke technology stack, stroke whatever it may be. So we're trying to make it more look, these are the essentials, but you should be able to do these, and then build. But that could all change as well. So please take that with a pinch of salt, as it's all in flux. We're a few years away from it coming out the door. We keep releasing drafts that people can look at and sort of interact with. But yeah, it's that aspect. And the other is trying to make decision trees is a thing we've been working on hard, so that you don't have to interpret it. You just follow the decision tree down and it'll come out with a pass or a fail. And that's the thing we've been trying hard to do, because the problem with WCAG 2 is it's a lot of words and you can interpret them however you want. Plus, you fall asleep halfway through reading them, so you just go, sorry, I won't do it. I shouldn't speak so badly of WCAG 2. It's really good, but it's all words. There's no visuals. It's a lot, and I think it's a big problem. So we're trying to break it down in different ways to consume the same information.
You know what I haven't seen in ages is like badges. I remember when like AAA, AA badges on websites, and Bobby approved back then, the Bobby testing thing that was like an English copper that basically said like this is accessible. And I love that. I think the first one that I saw was in WCAG 1, where the W3C provided you with these images, and one of them didn't have an alternative text. So that was kind of ironic that by putting that in the footer, you would have not reached AAA.
I'm not saying that I've raised two PRs, one for the fact that we used colour to denote state in one document that we wrote. So I'm not saying I said that was a bad idea for the WCAG documents. And the other one was we had text that was smaller than 16 pixels, which is what we've said for a long time is the bare minimum size you should have font size. So yeah, I'm not saying that we don't always dog food or anything, but we tend to fix the problems when we realise that we've got it up.
Sometimes it's necessity that gets people to it. I remember the 16 pixels. I sold that to a company when we started to actually expand to the Asian market, because kanji characters under 16 pixels are complete just rubbish. They're impossible to read. So that way we actually sold to them like, oh, to make it readable in China, we would go up to 16 pixels. How about we do it for the rest side as well? And they're like, yeah. And I mean, there are great cases like the UK government website when they did the simple English version. The amount of users and the amount of like, they didn't have that much more users, but they had a lot fewer people trying to contact them with problems. And that was a metric that was a really interesting thing as well. So if you actually look at accessibility enhancements of your product, don't look at like how many more users you will get, although that might be the thing, but get how many fewer confused users that ask for help you will get. That's probably a more happy an interesting metric to look at.
I think there's an aspect in the middle of that you said there, so that's very astute, other than you won't get, as most companies, the frustrated users phoning you up. Like the UK government gets that because you must fill your taxes in or you must tax your car. So if you see the percentage of drop that they had, that's how many users you're basically throwing away, because they won't phone. They'll just go to somebody else who doesn't have accessibility problems. So yeah, it's one of the best metrics we have, really. And it was something like a 15% improvement or something like that, which conflates to about 5 to 10% of the population, which is about what we think is about right for people with disabilities using websites. So yeah, it's super interesting stuff like that. But yeah, for you and me and most of the stuff we do, users will just go elsewhere. They vote with their feet. You know, you can.
I mean, it's interesting that Dan doing all our shorts and stuff, and we use like several systems to do the animated captions that you have to put on TikTok and you have to put on Instagram, and it's actually. Yeah, it's getting 80% of the way there, but we also have to edit something by hand. We are developers; it always does wrong. Like there's like weird developers, or with like we are 3 words and things like that. But it seems like the tooling helps us in this regard a lot as well. What I'm confused about is like the way how fast these things flash and actually help. Do actually captioning that is in part of the video, is that an accessibility issue for people who are neurodivergent?
Short answer is yes. Short answer is no. For some people, it can be very useful having one word on the screen at a time. So one of the things that a lot of people who are dyslexic have is they can't follow 2 lines very well. They tend to jump because white space can draw their vision in directions they're not expected. So one word on a time actually can aid with comprehension. Also helps people where English is a second language. You know, you can hear what Danny's saying, but, you know, he has got a bit of a British accent. So, you know, seeing the words on the screen goes, oh, well, that's what he meant by that, mucker. All right, right? So there's that aspect. But then on the flip side, you've got people who are very sensitive to fast motion, and they may find that causes anxiety. You've got people who read slowly, and they might get really annoyed that they're all going past so fast. And finally, baked-in captions are absolutely useless to anyone who can't see. So, you know, that's the downside, because there's people who use Braille. And the only way that they can get the information is not from your baked-in captions. They need real captions, because that can be translated via their Braille reader. So, yeah, the short answer is, does it help? Some people. But that's the problem with most accessibility. It helps someone, and for someone else, it might actually be a hindrance. And you've just got to try and find a balance. And that's why WCAG's there. Just follow WCAG. Do what that says. You'll be doing the best you can. Yeah.
I mean, I like it, but it overwhelms me as well. Like I can't do TikTok more than a minute. I'm like, okay, stop that.
No.
It's like being in a pub and looking at the pucky the whole time, beeping away and blinking. It's just basically like stop vying for my attention all the time. It feels very overwhelming, but it seems like a whole generation of people need it, and I find it fascinating that like captions became a thing with Gen Z. That basically because they sit on the train and look at videos and look at the animated captions, they wouldn't look at it without it.
That's the opposite side of it, though. That's the captions as the engagement piece, because everything has to be fast cuts and fast paced, and you've got to catch people's attention. So captions, ironically, are also being used not just for the ability to be able to have no audio on a train and understand the video. It's you've got to throw 50 captions up on the screen. It's got to be fast paced and bam, because otherwise someone will scroll. And sadly, it's not something you can do anything about, because human nature dictates how the algorithms work, and the algorithms work on what people will engage with, and people will engage with your captions going like this at 100 miles an hour over if you put them on the screen one after the other. So yeah, sadly, that's what dictates it. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it?
I mean, I look at like Fireship videos and these kind of things, and it just I feel dirty trying to do that. Like, I mean, Dan, you do a lot of our video production, but that like embedding memes every 2 seconds that fade in and come out, we haven't stooped down to that one yet, but maybe we should because of engagement.
I don't know. It's difficult. I always look at it a little bit like, yes, it's good for your engagement, but it's also kind of to a certain audience. Like our audience would respond very strangely to that. They would be like, why is this sort of, I think someone called it the other day, Gen Z coded. Like when you've built something that's designed for Gen Z without ever saying to them, this is made for you. So like you're saying, Graham, like I've noticed that the captions in the middle of the screen, so not at the bottom, like right in the middle, regardless of what's actually happening, is when I know it's just for engagement. Like if it's one word, it's highlighting the one word, it's slap bang in the middle, it's just for engagement.
I'll answer that quickly. If it's in the middle of the screen, it's because they're going to use it on multiple platforms. Because when you actually look at the available space on multiple platforms, it is literally a square in the middle of the screen.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, look, we
Absolutely.
can make this far more popular with Gen Z. Just add a fourth panel on the side, put Subway Racer on that, and then we just have to do fast cuts, so we have to look like we're talking like that.
Zoom constantly.
Yeah, exactly. You could 1,000 more viewers on the stream if we did that.
Fair enough. I guess we are at the end of the show. I mean, this could go on for hours, and we do it more. We invite you back. This is fun. So, any last words from you to our audience who are left?
Yeah, if there is anybody left after our rants and side quests, just thanks for watching. And hopefully, if you have an interest in accessibility, I've not said anything that puts you off, despite the quite frank conversations. I hope, if anything, it has got you interested and realised that it is a mile wide, 3-inch deep subject, which is super fun because you've got to try and balance 100 things at once. I've been doing it for years and not got bored of it, just because there's always something to learn. There's always a new thing that you didn't know. There's always something you can do better. So absolutely have a look. I have one article that, if we have time, I will try and find the link for it very quickly, which is 101 accessibility tips. It's what I believe, because I wrote the thing, obviously, is a really good point for you to get an idea of where to start with accessibility and all the things that it involves, and just a general overview doc. So that's what I built it for, and I'd love, if possible, to share that for. I will show that in the private chat, and then if you can put that wherever we are. But yeah, no, and thank you for having me. It's always nice catching up with you both. And like I said, it's been very nice not being on the teetering on the edge of a stage trying to talk to you both like I was last time.
Cool.
Oh, there we go.
Any last words from you, Dan?
Yeah, I would just say I like what Graham said earlier, where it was like, just go and make something bonkers, something that's really out there. Like your stuff. And I will say, a little plug for you, Graham. The good thing about your branding of Graham the Dev is you've even done it with the domain name, grahamthe.dev, which goes to your blog. So yeah, go and check out Graham's absolutely bonkers. Can this be done with CSS? Can this be done and still be accessible? Because usually the answer is yes. But yeah, he's got some really good stuff. So go and check it out. Go and make something a little bit out there. And see if it can be accessible at the end of the day. There you go.
Cool. I also want to thank you for watching. We're going to be back next Wednesday, where I'm going to be in a hotel room in America at 6:30 in the morning. So hopefully it's going to be me in a bathrobe and the contents of the minibar spread around me or something. I'm not quite sure what's going to be the thing, because I'm going to be speaking at the All Things Open conference in Raleigh in North Carolina. I'm now here still in the library. It was interesting, when I came in, I asked her if she's got any books on paranoia, and she just whispered, "They're right behind you."
Very good. Very good.
And that's it from us. Thanks for watching. See you at WeAreDevelopers Live next week.